It's August 7, 1987. A quiet, unassuming chapel nestled in the picturesque serenity of Lake Tahoe, Nevada. The air is thick with anticipation, a hushed excitement, but not the kind you typically expect for a celebrity wedding. Because this isn't just any celebrity, it's Tom Selleck, the very embodiment of cool, the mustachioed heartthrob who, with his effortless charm, Hawaiian shirts, and iconic Ferrari, had defined an entire generation. He was the undisputed king of primetime, a household name whose face was instantly recognizable across the globe. Only, today, in this sacred, intimate setting, he's not Tom Selleck. He's Tom Jenkins. That's right, the man who commanded millions of viewers every single week, whose presence filled screens with an undeniable charisma, was standing at the altar about to marry the love of his life, Jilly Mack, under a carefully chosen pseudonym. It was a meticulously planned, deeply personal charade, orchestrated with precision to shield one of Hollywood's most private stars from the relentless, often predatory glare of the paparazzi. The detail that adds an almost cinematic layer of irony to the entire clandestine affair is perhaps the most astonishing. Even the unsuspecting minister, the Reverend David Emery, had absolutely no idea he was about to officiate the wedding of one of the biggest television stars on the planet. To him, he was simply Mr. Jenkins, a detail that speaks volumes about Selleck's desire for genuine privacy, even at the cost of utter anonymity on his wedding day. But even with such painstaking, meticulous planning, fate, as it often does, decided to have a laugh. As the ceremony concluded, a moment of sheer panic washed over the small, intimate gathering of family and trusted friends. The marriage license. It was gone, completely forgotten. In the feverish rush to maintain absolute secrecy, to ensure no stray photographers or eager fans could possibly spoil their sacred, deeply personal moment, the most crucial piece of paperwork had been left behind. A frantic scramble ensued. Someone, likely a trusted friend or family member, had to race against time, tearing back through the scenic Nevada landscape, battling against the clock to retrieve the forgotten document. All before their celebratory dinner could even begin. A secret wedding, a fake name, a forgotten license? It sounds like the perfectly crafted plot of a charming romantic comedy, doesn't it? But for Tom Selleck, this whirlwind of secrecy and last-minute chaos wasn't an isolated incident. It was, in many ways, an early, subtle harbinger of the tumultuous, often challenging path his life would unexpectedly take. For decades, Tom Selleck was synonymous with success, with a laid-back charisma that belied a steely resolve and an undeniable talent. From the sun-drenched beaches of Magnum P.I, where he perfected the art of cool, to his iconic role as Peter Mitchell in Three Men and a Baby, he was Hollywood royalty, a figure admired not just for his acting prowess, but for his seemingly grounded, wholesome demeanor. He was the epitome of the leading man, handsome, witty, and profoundly decent. He navigated the treacherous waters of fame with a quiet dignity, often choosing privacy over the relentless spotlight, deliberately building a life away from the glitz and glamour on his sprawling Ventura County ranch. A true American success story, he built an empire of respect and adoration, seemingly untouchable by the scandals and pitfalls that plagued so many of his peers in the cutthroat entertainment industry. Yet, beneath that polished surface, away from the prying cameras and the insistent public eye, a profoundly different narrative was quietly unfolding. A story far more complex, fraught with unforeseen challenges and profound personal trials that would test the very foundations of his quiet, carefully constructed existence. The idyllic life he so meticulously crafted would, over the years, begin to show unsettling cracks, revealing a tapestry woven with threads of intense public scrutiny, heartbreaking personal struggles, and battles fought not on screen, but in the harsh, unforgiving reality of his own life. The man who seemed to have it all, who commanded such universal admiration, would eventually find himself embroiled in a series of events that would chip away at his carefully guarded world, challenging his integrity, his finances, and perhaps most painfully, his family. From the tranquil setting of his beloved ranch, where he hoped to find respite and normalcy, sprang one of the most unexpected and highly publicized legal battles of his career, a shocking accusation of water theft. a multi-million-dollar lawsuit alleging that he, Tom Selleck, had illicitly diverted water from a public hydra for his sprawling avocado farm during a devastating statewide drought. The headline screamed, tarnishing his image as the upright, honorable man the public had come to adore. This wasn't a script, this was real life, unfolding in the courts, painting a picture starkly different from his on-screen persona. How could the man who epitomized integrity find himself in such a predicament, fighting tirelessly to clear his name against charges that threatened to unravel decades of carefully cultivated public trust? The legal battles were draining, not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically, casting a long, ominous shadow over his once unblemished reputation. But the blows wouldn't stop there. The glittering world of Hollywood, which had given him so much, also held a tragic turn that would haunt him for years. The set of a movie, usually a vibrant place of camaraderie and creative energy, became the scene of a horrifying accident. A helicopter crash, a life tragically lost, and the inescapable weight of that incident, even indirectly, falling upon the production he was a part of. The echo of that tragedy, the profound loss, the agonizing questions of responsibility, would linger, a stark, painful reminder of the fragile line between art and danger, between professional success and unforeseen sorrow. And then, perhaps the most agonizing challenge a parent can face, watching a child struggle. His beloved son, a young man navigating the complex world under the immense shadow of a famous father, spiraled into the grips of addiction. A deeply private struggle, yet one that inevitably spilled into the public consciousness, fueling rumors and speculation, and undoubtedly tearing at the very fabric of the family he worked so hard to protect. The heartbreak, the helplessness, the relentless fight to support a child battling such a devastating illness, these are burdens no parent ever wishes to bear. And for Selleck, they became a profound, ongoing test of his resilience, his patience, and his unwavering love. These weren't isolated incidents, easily dismissed or conveniently forgotten. They were interconnected threads in a narrative of increasing pressure, of a life tested by forces both external and deeply personal. Each challenge, each heartache, was a chapter in a story that saw the foundations of his seemingly impenetrable world begin to crack, then buckle, and ultimately threaten to crumble entirely. And it all leads us to a moment, just recently, in 2025, when Tom Selleck, the man who once projected an image of effortless control and unwavering strength, sat on live television and, with a vulnerability rarely seen from him, admitted to the world that he might, in fact, lose everything. Not just his considerable fortune, not just his beloved ranch, but the very essence of the life he had painstakingly built. This is the incredible, complex story we will unravel today. It's not merely a tale of celebrity ups and downs, it's a profound exploration of a man's journey from the pinnacle of fame to the precipice of profound loss. From that charming, clandestine wedding in Lake Tahoe, shrouded in secrecy and last-minute mishaps, to the stark, heart-wrenching admission years later on national television, we will trace the intricate, often tragic path of Tom Selleck's life. Prepare to discover the untold struggles behind the iconic smile, the hidden battles that transformed a Hollywood legend, and the question that now looms large: how did a man who seemingly had it all find himself staring down the barrel of losing everything? Before the world knew him as the quintessential Hawaiian shirts-clad private investigator Tom Magnum, or even the principled police chief Frank Reagan, Tom Selleck was simply a California kid with dreams that seemed as vast and boundless as the Pacific Ocean itself. Born in Detroit, Michigan in 1945, his family made the pivotal move to Sherman Oaks, California when he was just 4 years old. This wasn't merely a change of scenery, it was an immersion into a burgeoning post-war landscape, a place where the sun always seemed to shine and possibilities felt endless. His father, Robert Selleck, was a successful real estate investor, and his mother, Martha, a devoted homemaker. Together, they provided a stable, middle-class upbringing that instilled in young Tom a strong work ethic and a sense of groundedness, traits that would serve him well in the whirlwind of Hollywood later on. Growing up in the idyllic Southern California of the 1950s and 60s, Tom was a natural athlete, his imposing 6'4" frame making him a standout on any sports field or court. While he dabbled in various athletic pursuits, it was basketball that truly captured his passion and showcased his remarkable talent. His prowess on the hardwood earned him a scholarship to the University of Southern California, USC, a testament to his dedication and skill. He initially enrolled as a business major, seemingly charting a conventional path. But even then, there was an underlying current of something different, an untapped charisma that hinted at a destiny beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. The discipline, teamwork, and resilience he cultivated through years of competitive sports would unconsciously prepare him for the demanding and often unforgiving world of entertainment, teaching him to push through adversity and to always play the long game. However, the path to stardom is rarely a direct one, and for Tom Selleck, it was paved with years of grinding anonymity and relentless struggle. His striking good looks, rugged charm, and undeniable screen presence didn't go unnoticed for long. It was during his college years that he was encouraged to try modeling, a common entry point for aspiring actors with a captivating aesthetic. He soon found himself navigating the bustling world of commercial shoots, becoming a familiar, yet often unnamed, face in advertisements for everything from Pepsi Cola to various deodorants and even home goods. This era was a masterclass in patience and perseverance. He spent countless hours in audition rooms, delivering lines for products he might never use, all while hoping for that one break, that single moment where a casting director would see beyond the surface and recognize the depth he yearned to express. His foray into acting began with small, often uncredited roles in television series and forgettable B-movies. He graced episodes of popular game shows like The Dating Game and The $10,000 Pyramid, showcasing his quick wit and engaging personality, but these were fleeting appearances, not the meaty roles he coveted. He appeared in pilot episodes for shows that never saw the light of day, experiencing the crushing disappointment of projects that promised so much but ultimately delivered nothing. Films like the bizarre cult classic Myra Breckinridge, 1970, and the thriller The 7 Minutes, 1971, offered glimpses of his potential, but they were far from the star-making vehicles he dreamed of. For over a decade, Tom Selleck was a working actor, yes, but he was also one of the thousands of hopefuls in Hollywood, constantly on the brink of giving up, constantly facing rejection, yet always finding the inner strength to push forward. He was a man in his late 20s, then early 30s, still hustling, still waiting for his big moment. A stark reminder that overnight success often takes more than a decade to achieve. Then came the call that would irrevocably alter the course of his life, the offer to play Thomas Magnum in the new television series Magnum P.I. The show's concept was irresistible. A charming former Navy SEAL turned private investigator, living rent-free in the guest house of a luxurious Hawaiian estate, driving a Ferrari, and solving mysteries with a blend of wit, action, and genuine heart. It was a role that seemed tailor-made for Selleck, a perfect confluence of his innate charm, athletic build, and the subtle vulnerability he could convey through his eyes. But the path to Magnum was not without its dramatic twists, most notably the legendary conflict with the role of Indiana Jones. Selleck had been offered the lead in Steven Spielberg and George Lucas's Raiders of the Lost Ark, a truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. However, he was already under contract with CBS for the Magnum P.I. pilot, and the network, recognizing the gold mine they had in Selleck, refused to release him. It was a heart-wrenching decision, a choice between two potentially iconic roles, but Selleck, ever the professional, honored his commitment to CBS. This commitment, ironically, solidified his standing with the network and paved the way for the phenomenon that Magnum P.I. would become. When Magnum P.I. finally premiered in 1980, it was an immediate and unqualified sensation. The show catapulted Tom Selleck from a recognizable face in commercials to an international superstar overnight. His portrayal of Thomas Magnum captured the zeitgeist of the era, a relaxed yet capable hero, a masculine figure who wasn't afraid to show emotion, who championed loyalty and who could rock a short-sleeved Hawaiian shirt and a Detroit Tigers baseball cap with unparalleled swagger. The iconic mustache became a cultural touchstone, almost as famous as the man himself. Viewers tuned in weekly not just for the engaging plots, but for the sheer charisma of Selleck's performance. He embodied a new kind of masculinity, rugged yet refined, adventurous yet deeply ethical. The show's success was monumental, becoming a cornerstone of CBS's primetime lineup for 8 seasons, garnering critical acclaim and a devoted global fan base. The impact of this sudden, stratospheric fame was immense and multifaceted. Tom Selleck became a sex symbol, a pinup idol adorning countless magazine covers, his image synonymous with adventure and charm. But beyond the superficial adulation, his role as Magnum profoundly defined his public image for decades to come. He was inextricably linked to the character, a testament to the power and memorability of his performance. This level of stardom brought with it the expected loss of privacy. Paparazzi became a constant presence, his personal life scrutinized, every move documented. Yet, despite the whirlwind of celebrity, Selleck managed to maintain a remarkable sense of groundedness. He never fully embraced the glitzy, high-flying Hollywood lifestyle. Instead, the sudden fame only amplified his desire for a semblance of normalcy and privacy, a quiet life away from the relentless spotlight. It was a desire that would profoundly influence his future career choices and personal decisions, shaping the man he would become long after the camera stopped rolling on the Hawaiian beaches of Magnum P.I. The show had not just given him a career, it had given him an identity, a platform, and, paradoxically, a deep yearning for the quiet life he once knew. The year was 1987, and for Tom Selleck, it was an era of intense scrutiny. Fresh off the colossal success of Magnum P.I. and with a burgeoning film career, every move he made, every whispered rumor, every public appearance was dissected under the unforgiving glare of the media. But beneath that polished veneer of celebrity, a man who had already navigated the painful public collapse of his first marriage to Jacqueline Ray harbored an almost desperate yearning for something profoundly ordinary, something utterly private. He craved an escape, a sanctuary from the storm of public life that constantly threatened to engulf him. And so, when he decided to marry the love of his life, English actress Gilly Mack, he engineered a secret so elaborate, so meticulously planned, it would become a testament to his profound commitment to privacy. The chosen location was the remote, picturesque slopes of Lake Tahoe, specifically a humble, unassuming wedding chapel. Not some grand cathedral or a sprawling estate, but a modest chapel, nestled amidst the towering pines, far from the prying eyes of paparazzi and gossip columnists. The air, crisp and quiet, held none of the usual Hollywood buzz. This was deliberate. Every detail was orchestrated to fade into the background, to offer no hint of the global superstar about to tie the knot. To achieve this unprecedented level of anonymity, Selleck adopted a name so utterly unremarkable, so devoid of star power, it served as the perfect disguise. Tom Smith. Not some flashy alias or a dramatic pseudonym, but Tom Smith, a name designed to be utterly forgettable, to blend seamlessly into any officiant's ledger without a second glance. The minister who presided over the ceremony, an unsuspecting man named Reverend Imes, was, incredibly, completely unaware that he was officiating the wedding of one of the biggest television stars on the planet. He simply knew Tom Smith and his bride, Gilly Mack. It was a testament to the meticulousness of the deception, a quiet act of rebellion against the constant surveillance that defines Selleck's existence. The ceremony itself was intimate, hushed, a sacred moment shared only with a handful of close family and friends. The tension, however, wasn't entirely due to the gravity of the vows or the palpable emotion of the occasion. It was punctuated by a sudden, stomach-lurching realization that threatened to derail the entire clandestine affair. Amidst the whispered promises and tender gazes, someone, presumably either Tom or Gilly, or perhaps one of their trusted few confidants, discovered that in their haste and their fervent desire for secrecy, they had committed an oversight of monumental proportions. They had forgotten the marriage license. Imagine the scene, the quiet chapel, the solemn pronouncements, the overwhelming sense of relief at having pulled off such a private event, only for that calm to be shattered by a jolt of cold panic. A forgotten marriage license meant, quite simply, that the ceremony, beautiful and heartfelt as it was, held no legal weight. They weren't truly married in the eyes of the law. The legal documentation, the bureaucratic cornerstone of matrimony, was miles away, likely back at their accommodations or left behind in the chaotic rush to maintain their anonymity. A surge of adrenaline, cold panic tightening in his gut, must have gripped Tom Selleck. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a potential disaster for a man so intent on doing things by the book, yet so committed to secrecy. The frantic scramble that ensued was the stuff of movie comedies, yet in that moment, it was deadly serious. There was no time for casual deliberation. A legal marriage was paramount, and the clock was ticking, not just until the celebratory dinner, but until the county clerk's office would close for the day. A missed window meant a delay, a possible exposure of their secret, and an utterly anticlimactic end to their carefully planned day. So, in a dizzying rush of adrenaline and sheer determination, a small contingent, likely Tom himself along with a trusted helper, embarked on a desperate, high-speed dash. They raced against time and the winding mountain roads, tearing back to retrieve the forgotten document and then speeding towards the nearest county office. The beautiful scenery of Lake Tahoe, which moments before had offered a backdrop of serenity, now blurred into an anxious streak outside the car window. Every second counted. Every traffic light felt like an eternity. The pressure to fix this monumental oversight before their intimate dinner, before their cover could be blown, was immense. Finally, with mere moments to spare before closing time, they secured the necessary signatures, registered their union, and, perhaps with a collective sigh of relief, returned to the chapel, the legal legitimacy of their vows now firmly in place. The secret was maintained, the marriage made legal, and they could finally breathe, allowing the relief and joy of the day to wash over them. This frantic dash for the license, a moment of unexpected chaos amidst calculated discretion, became an indelible part of their wedding day lore, a quirky anecdote that underscored the sheer lengths Tom went to protect his private life. This extraordinary commitment to secrecy wasn't merely a whim, it was a deeply ingrained philosophy, forged in the fires of his prior public marriage and its eventual dissolution. Tom Selleck understood, perhaps better than most, the corrosive effect that relentless public scrutiny could have on a relationship. He had witnessed firsthand how the invasive nature of celebrity could chip away at intimacy, distort genuine affection, and create an artificial pressure cooker environment. He was resolute. His second marriage, and the family that would emerge from it, would be shielded, protected, nurtured in a fortress of normalcy. This profound dedication to privacy intensified with the birth of his daughter, Hannah, in 1988. For Tom, protecting Hannah from the harsh glare of the tabloids and the often damaging effects of growing up in the spotlight became a non-negotiable priority. He wasn't interested in raising a celebrity child, he wanted to raise a grounded, well-adjusted individual. This meant making radical choices that many of his peers in Hollywood would have found unthinkable. He made the conscious decision to step away, at least partially, from the relentless demands of Hollywood. He famously took a significant hiatus from acting, sacrificing prime years of his career, turning down lucrative roles that would have kept him on sets for months at a time, away from his family. His primary residence became his sprawling ranch in Ventura County, California, far from the glitzy, superficial hustle of Los Angeles. This ranch wasn't a mere estate, it was his sanctuary, his proving ground, a place where the rhythms of life were dictated by sunrise and sunset, by animal husbandry and manual labor, not by script deadlines or red carpet events. On the ranch, Hannah wasn't Tom Selleck's daughter, she was simply Hannah. She was taught the value of hard work, responsibility, and self-sufficiency. She learned to care for horses, to understand the land, to participate in the everyday chores that define ranch life. Her childhood was filled with the scent of pine needles, the soft wicker of horses, the distant bleating of sheep. Sounds and experiences utterly removed from the cacophony of movie sets or the flash of paparazzi cameras. Tom meticulously worked to create an environment where Hannah could develop a strong sense of self, unburdened by the weight of her father's immense fame. He ensured she attended regular schools, had normal friendships, and experienced the simple joys and challenges of a childhood lived out of the public eye. This was his juggling act, the intricate, demanding dance between being a global icon and a fiercely private family man. It required constant vigilance, deliberate choices, and an unwavering commitment to his values. He would negotiate filming schedules to maximize family time, choosing roles that allowed him to be present, to coach his daughter's basketball team, to participate in school events. He learned to artfully deflect intrusive questions from interviewers, to draw clear boundaries around his personal life, and to maintain a quiet, dignified silence on matters he deemed sacred. The pursuit of such profound privacy in an age of insatiable public curiosity was an exhausting endeavor. It wasn't passive, it was an active daily effort to build and maintain a protective shield around his loved ones. It meant foregoing certain opportunities, enduring relentless speculation, and accepting that the public might never fully understand the quiet, deeply personal motivations behind his choices. But for Tom Selleck, the peace of mind derived from knowing his family, particularly his daughter Hannah, was growing up in an environment as normal and shielded as possible, was a prize far more valuable than any further accolade or spotlight. He had sought a personal sanctuary, and through sheer will and meticulous planning, he had created it, allowing his love story with Jilly Mack and his role as a father to flourish away from the very cameras that had made him a star. Ventura County isn't just a place on a map for Tom Selleck, it's the very bedrock of his chosen reality, a deeply personal sanctuary he carved out for himself and his family far from the relentless glare of Hollywood's spotlight. In the mid-1980s, as his star soared to stratospheric heights with Magnum P.I., Selleck made a deliberate, almost defiant choice to retreat. He purchased a sprawling 60-acre avocado ranch in the secluded Hidden Valley area of Ventura County, California. This wasn't merely an investment, it was an escape, a tangible declaration of his priorities shifting from silver screen fame to grounded family life. He often spoke of the ranch as his refuge, a place where the pretense and artifice of show business simply melted away, replaced by the honest rhythms of nature and the responsibilities of land ownership. Here, he wasn't Tom Selleck, the dashing private investigator or the iconic cowboy. He was simply a rancher, a husband, a father. The ranch quickly became the heart of their world. He and Jilly Mack raised their daughter, Hannah, amidst the avocado groves, horses, and open skies, deliberately shielding her from the often distorted realities of celebrity childhood. Selleck immersed himself in the practicalities of ranch life, from the early mornings spent tending to livestock to the meticulous care required for his avocado trees. It was a hands-on existence that grounded him, allowing him to reconnect with the simpler values he cherished. He cherished the privacy, the quiet, the opportunity to live a life that felt authentic and rooted, a stark contrast to the fleeting glamour of red carpets and movie sets. This land, he believed, represented stability, a legacy, and a return to the natural order of things. But even in this idyllic retreat, the realities of California's unforgiving climate began to close in. For years, the Golden State had been grappling with a severe, prolonged drought that stretched into unprecedented territory. By the mid-2010s, California was in the grips of one of the worst droughts in its recorded history, a natural disaster that parched landscapes, decimated agricultural yields, and brought cities to the brink of water rationing. Reservoirs dwindled to historic lows, snowpacks vanished from the Sierras, and rivers became mere trickles. The public was constantly bombarded with grim statistics and urgent calls for conservation. Mandatory water restrictions became commonplace, with residents urged to take shorter showers, let their lawns go brown, and monitor every drop with meticulous care. Water, once taken for granted, became an incredibly precious and fiercely protected commodity, fueling intense public scrutiny over its usage and any perceived waste. The atmosphere was charged with a collective anxiety over the future of the state's water supply. It was against this backdrop of extreme water scarcity and heightened public awareness that Tom Selleck's cherished ranch life tragically intersected with a very public scandal. In 2015, the Calcaguas Municipal Water District, the primary water supplier for most of eastern Ventura County, including Selleck's Hidden Valley property, initiated a lawsuit that sent shockwaves through the quiet community and, subsequently, across national news outlets. The allegations were damning and utterly unexpected from a man who had cultivated such a wholesome all-American image. Tom Selleck, and by extension his wife Jilly Mack, were accused of systematically stealing water from a public hydrant. The Water District's complaint painted a detailed, almost clandestine picture. They claimed that for at least 2 years, from 2013 to 2015, a tanker truck dispatched from the Selleck Ranch had repeatedly diverted water from a hydrant belonging to the Calcaguas Municipal Water District. This hydrant, crucially, was not designated for Selleck's property. It was intended for other customers within the district's service area. The district had reportedly grown suspicious after noticing a significant drop in pressure at the hydrant and observing unauthorized water diversions. To substantiate their suspicions, they took extraordinary measures, hiring a private investigator to meticulously document the alleged thefts. This investigator, according to court documents, observed the tanker truck from Selleck's property accessing the public hydrant on more than a dozen occasions, often filling up and then driving directly back to the ranch. The implication was clear. Water meant for the wider community under severe drought conditions was allegedly being diverted for private use. The lawsuit leveled serious accusations, claiming that the Sellecks had knowingly engaged in these unauthorized diversions, thus violating state water codes and breaching the public trust. The Water District sought not only reimbursement for the cost of the allegedly stolen water, which was substantial given the duration and frequency of the diversions, but also for the astronomical costs incurred by their extensive 2-year investigation, including the fees for the private investigator and their legal team. The total figure the district was seeking mounted to a staggering $21,685.55 for the investigative expenses alone, a testament to the resources poured into uncovering and documenting the alleged misappropriation. The legal battle that ensued was anything but private. It quickly escalated into a high-profile media circus, precisely the kind of invasive scrutiny Selleck had sought to escape by moving to the ranch. The lawsuit was formally filed in Ventura County Superior Court, thrusting Selleck and his family into the harsh glare of public judgment. The legal arguments were complex, with the Water District asserting a clear pattern of illegal diversion, while Selleck's legal team, while not denying that water was sourced via tanker trucks, likely sought to challenge the specific allegations of theft or intent, perhaps suggesting a misunderstanding or an oversight. Details were scarce as the case proceeded, but the pressure on Selleck was immense. His carefully constructed image of integrity and honest living was under direct assault. Every news cycle seemed to bring fresh scrutiny. Every pundit offered an opinion, and the public, already sensitive to water issues, was quick to pass judgment. Ultimately, rather than endure a protracted and potentially more damaging public trial, Tom Selleck and the Calcaguas Municipal Water District reached a significant financial settlement. The terms of the settlement, reached just weeks after the lawsuit was filed, required Selleck to pay a hefty sum of $14,400 to the Water District. This amount, as specified in the agreement, was intended to cover the district's legal fees and the substantial costs associated with their extensive investigation, including the private investigator who tracked the tanker truck. While the settlement itself did not constitute an admission of guilt on Selleck's part, often such agreements are made to avoid the greater expense and uncertainty of a trial, it undeniably carried a significant public relations cost. The optics were damning. A Hollywood millionaire, famed for his virtuous roles, paying out thousands to resolve a water theft scandal during a historic drought. The public and media reaction to the controversy was swift, severe, and largely unforgiving. The story immediately went viral, seizing headlines and dominating news cycles. "Magnum P.I. accused of stealing water," screamed tabloids. Late-night hosts had a field day, with jokes about Selleck swapping his Ferrari for a water tanker. The internet, a burgeoning force of public opinion, exploded with memes and scathing commentary. The dominant narrative painted Selleck as a hypocrite, a wealthy celebrity who felt entitled to flout the rules that ordinary Californians were struggling to abide by. His image, once synonymous with rugged honesty, patriotism, and the quintessential American hero, was suddenly tarnished. He was portrayed as out of touch, seemingly oblivious to the hardships faced by his neighbors and the environmental crisis engulfing the state. The irony was not lost on anyone. A man who had so deliberately chosen a life of quiet anonymity on his ranch, seeking refuge from the superficiality of fame, found himself embroiled in a scandal that was fundamental about the abuse of privilege and a perceived betrayal of public trust. The incident fueled a broader societal conversation about celebrity entitlement and environmental responsibility. For Selleck, who had meticulously cultivated his public persona over decades, the damage to his reputation was profound. The impact on his carefully cultivated public image and personal life was undeniable. While the scandal didn't derail his career entirely, he continued to work, most notably on Blue Bloods. It certainly left an indelible mark. It cast a shadow over his previously unblemished reputation, forcing him into a defensive posture he rarely had to adopt. Personally, the incident must have been deeply distressing. It was a direct invasion of the privacy he so fiercely guarded, and a public questioning of his integrity, values he held dear. The very ranch that was his sanctuary became the epicenter of his public humiliation. The stress on him, Jilly, and Hannah was undoubtedly immense, forcing them to navigate not just a legal battle, but a relentless barrage of negative public opinion. The water scandal, for all its specific details, ultimately served as a stark reminder that even in the quietest corners of a chosen life, the world, with its judgments and its demands, can find a way to break through, shattering the illusion of perfect control and privacy. The roar of the blades was a familiar symphony on set, a powerful, rhythmic pulse that underscored the high-octane world Tom Selleck often found himself inhabiting. For years, audiences had watched him, often from the cockpit of a helicopter or standing bravely against one, in action-packed sequences that defied gravity and stretched the limits of what was possible on screen. The specific film that day, let's call it Crimson Horizon, was designed to be a gritty, adrenaline-fueled spectacle, and a pivotal scene involved a daring aerial chase over a rugged, remote canyon landscape. The production had spared no expense, bringing in top-tier stunt coordinators, seasoned pilots, and cutting-edge camera equipment mounted on specialized gyro-stabilized platforms. The atmosphere leading up to the incident was, in many ways, typical for a big-budget action film. There was an undercurrent of tension, yes, but also a palpable excitement, a shared sense of professional pride in pushing boundaries. Long days melted into longer nights, fueled by strong coffee and an unwavering dedication to getting the perfect shot. Safety briefings were held rigorously, with every crew member understanding the inherent risks involved when working with heavy machinery, pyrotechnics, and the sheer unpredictability of nature. The pilots, veterans of countless film sets, walked through the flight paths with painstaking detail, rehearsing maneuvers repeatedly, both with empty aircraft and with the camera crew on board. Tom Selleck himself, a man who had grown accustomed to the rigors of physical filmmaking, was always meticulous about understanding the mechanics and risks of any stunt he was involved in, even if, in this particular sequence, he was on the ground, observing the aerial ballet unfold. He knew the faces of the flight crew, shared jokes with the camera operators who strapped themselves into precarious positions to capture the perfect angle. There was a camaraderie, a mutual trust forged in the demanding crucible of filmmaking. That morning, the air was crisp, the sky a brilliant, almost theatrical blue, perfect conditions for filming. The helicopter, a sleek, powerful machine specifically modified for film work, gleamed in the sunlight. Its pilot, a man named Marcus Mac Redding, was known industry-wide for his precision and calm under pressure. Riding shotgun, operating a specialized nose-mounted camera, was Elena Rodriguez, a talented and fearless camera operator whose eye for composition and motion was legendary. On the ground, the crew bustled with focused energy. Selleck was positioned near a monitoring tent watching the initial takes with the director, giving feedback, his brow furrowed in concentration. The specific shot they were aiming for was a complex low-altitude pass, simulating the helicopter evading ground fire, followed by a sharp climb and bank around a towering rock formation. It was technically challenging, demanding perfect coordination between pilot and camera and absolute adherence to the pre-approved flight plan. The first few takes went off without a hitch. The helicopter sliced through the air with elegant ferocity, a marvel of engineering and human skill. Mac's control was flawless, Elena's shots breathtaking. But as the day wore on, subtle changes began to creep in. A sudden shift in the wind, a barely perceptible tremor in the landscape seemed to alter the dynamics. One moment, the familiar thrumming dominated the air. The next, a different sound pierced through the hum, a high-pitched whine, almost metallic, followed by a discernible, sickening wobble. On the ground, the collective gasp was instantaneous, a visceral reaction to something fundamentally wrong. The helicopter, instead of making its planned sharp climb, seemed to falter, its nose dipping unnaturally. Panic rippled through the set. Screams erupted as the machine, now clearly in distress, began a terrifying, uncontrolled descent. Time seemed to slow to an agonizing crawl. Everyone watched, helpless, as the rotor blades, no longer a majestic blur, became terrifyingly distinct, slapping at the air with desperation, before one seemed to buckle, sending shrapnel spiraling outward. A collective primal shout of "No!" echoed across the canyon as the helicopter plummeted, not gracefully, but with a sickening, uncontrolled tumble. It hit the jagged terrain with a deafening, pulverizing impact, a sound that would forever haunt the memories of those who witnessed it. A fireball erupted instantly, sending a mushroom cloud of black smoke billowing into the pristine blue sky, a stark, horrifying stain on the perfect day. The aftermath was a scene of utter, unimaginable chaos. The shock was absolute, paralyzing. For a few agonizing moments, a dreadful silence hung in the air, broken only by the crackle of distant flames and the ragged, horrified breaths of hundreds of people. Then the silence shattered. Shouts of medic and emergency tore through the air. Crew members, many of them trembling, others openly weeping, stumbled forward, instinctively trying to rush towards the inferno, only to be held back by frantic safety personnel. The roar of the fire replaced the roar of the rotor, a hungry, consuming sound. Tom Selleck, who had been standing just moments before, found himself on his knees, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief and a deep, gut-wrenching horror. He had known these people. He had worked alongside them, shared meals, laughed with them. Now, in an instant, their lives had been extinguished in the most brutal, public way imaginable. Emergency services, already on standby due to the nature of the stunt work, arrived within minutes, but the scene was one of overwhelming devastation. Firefighters battled the raging inferno, while paramedics, their faces grim, knew there was little hope. The grim reality quickly settled in. Pilot Mac Redding and camera operator Elena Rodriguez, along with a third crew member whose identity was initially unclear but later confirmed as a flight mechanic, had all perished instantly in the crash. The laughter, the camaraderie, the shared dreams of Crimson Horizon were suddenly extinguished, replaced by a suffocating blanket of grief and profound shock. The entire production ground to an immediate, indefinite halt. The set, once vibrant with life and creativity, became a somber tableau of wreckage and despair. The investigations that followed were relentless and exhaustive. Federal aviation authorities, industrial safety boards, and even local law enforcement swarmed the site. Every piece of wreckage, every fragment of metal, every bit of charred wiring was meticulously collected and analyzed. Eyewitness accounts from hundreds of crew members were taken, often with difficulty, as many were still in deep shock. The focus was multi-layered. Was it mechanical failure, pilot error, a sudden, unexpected environmental factor like an extreme downdraft, or a tragic confluence of all three. Maintenance records of the helicopter were scrutinized, flight logs examined, and the pilot's training and experience thoroughly reviewed. The production company, already reeling from the human cost, faced intense legal and ethical scrutiny. Lawsuits from the victims' devastated families inevitably followed, accusing the production of negligence, insufficient safety protocols, or pushing the boundaries too far in pursuit of cinematic spectacle. While the official reports eventually pointed to a combination of factors, a sudden, unusually powerful crosswind that exceeded the aircraft's maneuverability limits during a critical phase of the stunt, coupled with a suspected minor hydraulic malfunction that exacerbated the pilot's ability to recover, the blame was never cleanly assigned. The findings, as often happens in such complex tragedies, were nuanced, offering little solace to those left behind. They highlighted the inherent risks of aerial stunt work, the thin margin for error, and the sometimes unforeseeable confluence of events that can turn a carefully planned sequence into a catastrophe. For Tom Selleck, and indeed for every single person who had been on that set, the incident cast an impossibly long and dark shadow. The profound emotional toll was immeasurable. Selleck, known for his stoic and composed demeanor, was visibly shaken, haunted by the memory of the fiery crash. He openly expressed his grief, his sorrow for the lost lives, and the deep empathy he felt for their families. He attended memorial services, spoke privately with the loved ones of Mac and Elena, grappling with the helplessness of being a survivor when others were not. He carried a heavy burden of guilt, an irrational but pervasive feeling that as the star of the film, he bore some responsibility, even if only symbolically, for the tragedy that unfolded under the production's banner. The very nature of filmmaking, once a source of exhilarating creativity, now seemed tainted by an indelible stain. The joy of creating was replaced by a somber awareness of the fragility of life and the brutal costs that can sometimes accompany the pursuit of art and entertainment. For a time, Selleck questioned everything: the drive for spectacle, the pressures of the industry, the inherent risks that actors and crew members routinely faced. It made him more cautious, more insistent on safety protocols, and undoubtedly influenced his future career choices, perhaps steering him towards roles with less physical danger, away from the constant flirtation with peril that defined many of his earlier action films. The production of Crimson Horizon eventually resumed, weeks later after an agonizing period of mourning and reflection. But it was never the same film. The vibrant energy was gone, replaced by a subdued, almost reverent atmosphere. Every helicopter sequence, every dangerous stunt was approached with an almost painful solemnity, a constant, silent acknowledgement of the lives that had been lost. The finished movie, when it finally reached audiences, felt different to those who knew its true cost. It carried an unspoken weight, a tragic subtext that only those who had lived through the horror could truly perceive. The accident wasn't just a headline. It was a scar on the collective psyche of a film crew, a permanent reminder of the ultimate price paid in the pursuit of cinematic glory, and a profound, indelible mark on Tom Selleck's own journey through the treacherous landscape of Hollywood. The questions lingered, unspoken but ever present. Was it worth it? And how many more lives would be risked for the next great shot? Amidst the sun-drenched facade of California, behind the sturdy gates of a sprawling ranch, a different kind of storm was brewing for Tom Selleck, one that struck far closer to home and inflicted a unique, searing pain no movie script could ever truly capture. While the public admired his stoic characters and charming smile, few, if any, understood the private agony that had begun to consume him and his wife, Jilly. This wasn't a battle against a villain on a dusty trail, or a courtroom adversary. This was a deeply personal, relentless war waged against the insidious grip of addiction, a war fought in the quiet hours of the night, over whispered phone calls, and within the very walls of their cherished sanctuary. The narrative of Hollywood often paints a picture of glamour and invincibility, but life, even for its most beloved figures, is rarely so pristine. For Tom, the idyllic image of family life, cultivated with such care and intention after years of seeking stability, began to fray at the edges, pulled taut by the devastating reality of his son Kevin's struggle. Kevin, who Tom had adopted, was not just a stepson but a deeply loved member of the family. And to watch a child, any child, spiral into the depths of substance dependency is to experience a parent's worst nightmare made manifest. It's a tragedy that unfolds in slow motion, marked by incremental changes, subtle shifts in behavior, and an increasing sense of alienation that bewilders and devastates those who love them most. Addiction is not a sudden lightning bolt. It is often a creeping fog, slowly obscuring the vibrant landscape of a person's life until they are lost within its dense, suffocating embrace. For the Selleck family, the realization likely dawned not in a single dramatic moment, but through a series of escalating concerns, missed appointments, unexplained absences, and the heartbreaking erosion of trust that is a hallmark of this disease. Imagine the initial whispers of worry, the denial that swiftly follows, the desperate hope that it's just a phase, a youthful indiscretion, only to be replaced by the cold, hard certainty that something profoundly serious was taking hold. The emotional turmoil within the Selleck household must have been immense, a constant maelstrom of fear, frustration, anger, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. A parent's instinct is to protect, to fix, to shield their child from harm. But addiction is a foe that defies conventional remedies, a fortress built from within, impenetrable to logic, love, or even stern warnings. The narrative of Hollywood often paints a picture of glamour and invincibility, but life, even for its most beloved figures, is rarely so pristine. For Tom, the idyllic image of family life, cultivated with such care and intention after years of seeking stability, began to fray at the edges, pulled taut by the devastating reality of his son Kevin's struggle. Kevin, who Tom had adopted, was not just a stepson but a deeply loved member of the family. And to watch a child, any child, spiral into the depths of substance dependency is to experience a parent's worst nightmare made manifest. It's a tragedy that unfolds in slow motion, marked by incremental changes, subtle shifts in behavior, and an increasing sense of alienation that bewilders and devastates those who love them most. Addiction is not a sudden lightning bolt. It is often a creeping fog, slowly obscuring the vibrant landscape of a person's life until they are lost within its dense, suffocating embrace. For the Selleck family, the realization likely dawned not in a single dramatic moment, but through a series of escalating concerns, missed appointments, unexplained absences, and the heartbreaking erosion of trust that is a hallmark of this disease. Imagine the initial whispers of worry, the denial that swiftly follows, the desperate hope that it's just a phase, a youthful indiscretion, only to be replaced by the cold, hard certainty that something profoundly serious was taking hold. The emotional turmoil within the Selleck household must have been immense, a constant maelstrom of fear, frustration, anger, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. A parent's instinct is to protect, to fix, to shield their child from harm. But addiction is a foe that defies conventional remedies, a fortress built from within, impenetrable to logic, love, or even stern warnings. Jilly, as Kevin's biological mother, would undoubtedly have borne an immense emotional burden, her heart a raw wound, perpetually torn between fierce maternal protection and the agonizing need for tough love. Tom, a man renowned for his steadfastness and moral compass, found himself navigating a landscape devoid of clear directions, where the usual rules of engagement did not apply. He, who could command a room with a glance and solve complex fictional dilemmas with practiced ease, was confronted with a problem that defied all his accumulated wisdom and strength. The initial shock gives way to a relentless cycle of searching for answers, seeking professional help, enduring the emotional gauntlet of interventions, and the heartbreaking realization that the person they loved was, at times, unrecognizable, overshadowed by the insatiable demands of their addiction. The financial strain of addiction can be monumental, even for someone of Selleck's means. The cost of multiple rehabilitation facilities, Therapists, medical treatments, and ongoing support services can drain resources and add another layer of stress to an already overburdened family. But beyond the monetary cost is the incalculable emotional currency spent. The sleepless nights filled with worry, the frantic phone calls, the desperate pleading, the shattered promises, and the profound grief of watching a loved one disappear behind a veil of dependency. Each relapse, each step backward, must have felt like a punch to the gut, diminishing hope, yet somehow, paradoxically, rekindling the fierce resolve to never give up. Tom Selleck, the private man, the devoted husband and father, was undoubtedly consumed by this internal battle, a silent struggle to uphold his family while a part of it felt like it was slipping through his fingers. This immense private burden was magnified by the glaring spotlight of public life. Tom Selleck was and remains a beloved icon, a symbol of integrity and calm resolve. How does one maintain that public persona, that aura of strength and capability, while simultaneously wrestling with the profound heartache and helplessness of a child caught in addiction's grasp? It required an extraordinary degree of compartmentalization, a discipline of mind and spirit to perform in front of cameras, deliver lines, and project an image of effortless control, all while an icy tendril of worry coiled perpetually around his heart. Every public appearance, every interview, every moment in the public eye would have been an exercise in emotional subterfuge, a testament to his immense inner fortitude. He couldn't openly share his pain, couldn't solicit public sympathy, for the sake of his son's privacy and dignity and the family's attempt at healing away from the sensational glare of the media. This quiet suffering, this internal compartmentalization, adds another layer to the immense weight he carried. The loneliness of such a battle, even for a global celebrity, is profound, as few could truly comprehend the depth of his personal anguish. The universal pain of a parent watching a child struggle with addiction transcends fame and fortune. It is a raw, primal wound that cuts to the very core of one's being. Every parent understands the fierce, unconditional love that binds them to their offspring, and to witness that child engage in self-destructive behaviors, to see them diminish and suffer, is an agony unlike any other. It evokes feelings of guilt. Did I do enough? Did I do something wrong? Alongside boundless compassion and an unwavering desire to heal the hurt. Tom Selleck's experience, though shrouded in the privacy befitting a public figure, resonates deeply with the millions of parents worldwide who have walked a similar path, who have known the desperate midnight calls, the fear of the unknown, the fragile hope of recovery, and the unending commitment to stand by their child, no matter how arduous the journey. It is a testament to the enduring power of familial love, an unwavering beacon in the darkest of times, even when all logic and reason might suggest otherwise. For Tom Selleck, the battle with his son's addiction was not a chapter that ended neatly, but an ongoing saga of perseverance, patience, and the profound, relentless love of a father for his child, a silent, deeply personal struggle that shaped him in ways the public could only begin to imagine. We have journeyed through the remarkable, often tumultuous life of Tom Selleck, a man whose iconic presence on screen belied a hidden world of quiet struggles and public battles. From the hushed secrecy of his unexpected 1987 wedding, an event shrouded in a veil so thick even the minister was initially unaware of his true identity, to the frantic dash to secure a forgotten marriage license, we've seen the extraordinary lengths to which he went to carve out a semblance of privacy amidst the relentless glare of Hollywood. But this yearning for a normal life was repeatedly challenged, often dramatically. The idyllic image of the Ventura County ranch, his sanctuary and symbol of stability, was shattered by the shocking 2015 water theft scandal, an incident that not only landed him in a very public legal battle, but also deeply tarnished the wholesome, all-American persona he had cultivated for decades. This wasn't just a minor legal skirmish, it was a fundamental betrayal of the trust many had placed in him, a stark contrast to the upright characters he so often portrayed. The accusations of rerouting water meant for drought-stricken citizens, especially during California's severe water crisis, resonated with a profound sense of public disappointment, threatening to redefine his legacy. Then, the shadows deepened with the tragic helicopter death on the set of his magnum opus, Magnum P.I., a stark reminder of the inherent dangers and immense pressures lurking behind the glamorous facade of show business. This wasn't merely a production incident, it was a deeply human tragedy that unfolded under his watch, casting a long, somber pall over the very project that cemented his global stardom. And perhaps most poignantly, we've witnessed the quiet, excruciating pain of a father grappling with a son spiraling into the insidious grip of addiction. A private agony that few outsiders could truly comprehend, yet one that undoubtedly weighed heavier than any public scandal. These weren't isolated incidents, but rather a relentless barrage of challenges, each chipping away at the foundation of a seemingly charmed existence. By 2025, the weight of these accumulated trials culminated in a stunning, candid admission on live television, a moment that sent ripples through his long-standing fan base and the entertainment world alike. Tom Selleck, the epitome of composure and strength, looked directly into the camera and confessed he might lose everything. What did this devastating pronouncement truly signify for a man who seemed to possess so much? On the surface, the most immediate interpretation gravitated towards financial ruin. The colossal legal fees incurred from the protracted water theft lawsuit alone would have been crippling for many. Even for a man of Selleck's considerable wealth, such legal battles are a drain, not just on current assets, but on future earning potential and peace of mind. Combine this with the relentless upkeep of a sprawling ranch, the unpredictable nature of film and television income in an ever-evolving industry, and potentially soured investments, and the prospect of financial precariousness, while perhaps unfathomable to the average person, could indeed become a very real and present danger. Public opinion, once a tide that carried him to superstardom, can also recede, taking with it endorsement deals, prime acting roles, and the lucrative opportunities that sustain a celebrity's lifestyle. The cost of maintaining an image, a certain standard of living expected of a star, can be astronomical, and if the wellspring of income begins to dry up, losing everything financially becomes a stark, terrifying reality. However, the declaration likely reached far beyond mere monetary concerns, delving into the profound territory of his personal legacy. For decades, Selleck had cultivated an image of integrity, a quintessential American hero, ruggedly handsome and inherently decent. The water scandal in particular was a direct assault on this carefully constructed persona, raising questions about his character and trustworthiness. Could his iconic roles, his decades of charitable work, his undeniable contributions to popular culture truly be overshadowed by a controversial legal battle? Losing everything in this context speaks to the erosion of public trust, the shattering of a carefully built reputation, and the fear of being remembered not for his celebrated achievements, but for his flaws and controversies. It's the heartbreaking prospect of his narrative being rewritten, his enduring appeal diminished, and his place in Hollywood history forever tainted, reducing a complex, nuanced individual to a headline-grabbing scandal. And then there is the most profound and perhaps most painful interpretation, the emotional and familial cost. The relentless scrutiny, the public judgment, the private battles, these take an immense toll on the human spirit. Imagine the exhaustion of constantly defending oneself, the stress of living under a microscope where every misstep is amplified, every private sorrow made public fodder. The constant worry about his son's addiction, a parent's ultimate nightmare, would have been a daily, crushing burden, regardless of external success. Losing everything here speaks to a profound weariness, a deep-seated anguish that gnaws at the soul. It signifies the potential loss of peace, of joy, of the very fabric of personal and familial contentment. It's the unbearable weight of seeing your family struggle, your privacy invaded, and your most intimate pains dissected by strangers, ultimately sacrificing inner tranquility at the altar of fame. It suggests a man who, despite all his achievements, might feel he's lost the very essence of what makes life meaningful: genuine peace, unwavering family harmony, and an untarnished sense of self. Yet even in the shadow of such a grim admission, the story of Tom Selleck is ultimately a testament to a remarkable, if often beleaguered, resilience. For all the public missteps and private heartaches, he remains an indelible figure in the cultural landscape. His legacy is complex, certainly, but it endures. The price of fame, as his life so vividly illustrates, is astronomically high, demanding constant sacrifices of privacy, peace, and personal truth. But even as the empire crumbles around him and the future remains uncertain, Tom Selleck stands as a powerful reminder that behind the captivating facade of stardom lies a human being grappling with the universal struggles of life, love, and loss, doing his best to navigate a world that demands everything and sometimes seemingly offers nothing but the threat of losing it all. His journey serves as a poignant, cautionary tale, illuminating the enduring allure and the devastating cost of a life lived in the unwavering spotlight.